Huh? Ah, I'm recording.
Yeah.
You're ready? All
Okay.
right.
Thank you all.
Like potato, I didn't understand that. That's okay.
Later. I'll tell you later.
Yeah, later. It's better.
Thank you all for joining us today. So we'll discuss about the vital education, which is the most important of all. So Andrea, I would like you to.
I'll be glad to. Of all education, vital education is perhaps the most important, the most indispensable. Yet it is rarely taken up and pursued with discernment and method. There are several reasons for this. First, the human mind is in a state of great confusion about this particular subject. Secondly, the undertaking is very difficult, and to be successful in it, one must have endless endurance and persistence, and a will that no failure can weaken. This vital education has two principal aspects, very different in their aims and methods, but both equally important. First concerns the development and use of the sense organs. The second, the progressing awareness and control of the character, culminating in its transformation. The education of the senses, again, has several aspects, which are added to one another as the being grows. Indeed, it should never cease. The sense organs, if properly cultivated, can attain a precision and power of functioning far exceeding what is normally expected of them. To this general education of the senses and their functioning, there will be added, as early as possible, the cultivation of discrimination and of the aesthetic sense, the capacity to choose and to adopt what is beautiful and harmonious, simple, healthy, and pure. For there is a psychological health just as there is a physical health, a beauty and harmony of the sensations as of the body and its movements. As the capacity of understanding grows in the child, he should be taught in the course of his education to appreciate, as the capacity and understanding grows in the child, he should be taught in the course of his education to add artistic taste and refinement to power and precision. He should be shown, led to appreciate, taught to love beautiful, lofty, healthy, and noble things, whether in nature or in human creation. This should be a true aesthetic culture which will protect him from degrading influences. Comments?
Yeah, we'll start with you, Andrea.
I couldn't agree more. I think his I can't think of the word I want. His insistence on the rigor and the patience that is needed to achieve these goals is absolutely spot on. One of the things that he makes a comment on in another part of the passage is that one of our mistakes is to think that being happy is the aim of life, when in fact the aim is not just to be happy, but to delight in being. And that delight in being can lead you to true consciousness and true awareness, which can transform your character. If we can move from the notion that being cheerful and smiley is what we're hoping for every day, I think that we can focus on what that delight in being feels like and looks like. Again, we spoke last time about the importance of play and the importance of children searching out things that give them delight. And certainly this is absolutely aligned with that part of integral education. Someone else.
Martha, you want to share your views?
I've been reflecting on the meaning of vital education. I think this quotation is so complete. It's only to talk about it a little further. The goal is for educating the vital is to refine it and help it to develop. So, and involving all the senses. So it seems to me that the best way to do this is through experiencing the natural world, because being out in nature, all of our senses are engaged and we're aware of them. And what better exposure to beauty and for refining the vital than what the divine has created for us. Beyond that, what we can do with our sort of human interventions is the arts, music and the arts, whether it's through appreciating them, learning to appreciate beauty in all its forms of human expression, or whether it's through learning a musical instrument, learning to paint or to draw. Things of that nature are really important in children's education, everyone's education at any stage of life. And also through physical activity, through athletics and team sports, we learn to sort of modulate our emotions through any interaction with other people we do. And that's, of course, a part of the vital is our responses to emotion. So learning to regulate emotions is so important. And in the educational context, doing that through team sports is a possibility. We have the opportunity for that, or through individual athletics. Learning to be a good winner as well as a good loser. And not being overly proud or vain, not introducing egoism, training oneself or others in respectful competition, considerate competition, where competition comes into things, which it does in certain athletic contexts, but generally cooperation and teamwork is certainly something that can be emphasized. Thank you.
David, you want to?
So initially, I just want to push back a little against the assertion that one part of integral education is the most important. I think one of the lessons of integrality is that all the parts are important, and that the whole is constituted of all the parts interacting with each other, so that the development of the whole is dependent on all of the parts. As far as vital education, Rudolf Steiner uses a different term to describe this aspect of human capacity, human nature, human experience, but he's talking about the same thing. And this is something that the Waldorf education model actually does as well or better than any that I've ever seen. All of the children learn how to play flutes. So they all play flutes beginning, I believe, in 1st or 2nd grade, and then they all play throughout the next 5 or 6 years, and they all learn how to do it. There's no focus in my experience on who's really good in those early years. That comes later. Obviously, some people get better than others, but in those early years, they all learn how to do it. They all practice eurythmy, and eurythmy is a form of movement that combines balance and aesthetics and capacity to really feel your body, to control your body, to be in charge of your body's movement, and to move in a way that you organize consciously with other people at the same time. They all do art. And one of the critiques of Waldorf is they all draw the same thing a lot of the times. And that people who critique that don't really understand that what that is really about is that they're learning about discipline, they're learning about boundaries, they're learning about control of themselves. These are all aspects of vital education. There's still room for expression, but it takes place both within the guidelines of the particular art, and then there's other opportunities for more expressive art. They're also engaged in story, and a lot of the stories are about the way that human beings behave well. So there's stories about models of positive human behavior And so this has to do also with the learning about the emotions and the nature of the emotions. And then finally, there's also, in the Waldorf schools that I've seen, they all have gardens, and a lot of them have forests nearby. So there's also engagement in the natural world on a regular basis. There are other parts to it, but that's probably enough for now. So this is one model. It's obviously not the only model. Clearly there are others. But it is something, you know, I would suggest that Steiner really understood. And so there's, if you're looking for a model to work from, this would be a good place to start.
Thanks, David. But from your experience, David, did you see the continuity from elementary school to high school? Because I think that's where.
Well, what happens in the United States is that there's I don't have a number. This would be, somebody should study this. I haven't, and I don't know if anyone has, but there's a significant number of people who go through 8th grade in Waldorf schools and then decide not to go to Waldorf high schools. Part of that is because there are many more Waldorf schools than there are Waldorf high schools. So in many cases, there is no Waldorf high school available. But there's also, because one of the great failings of Waldorf is that it hasn't recognized as a form early adolescence and the rebellious and individuating qualities of early adolescence. What often happens in 6th, 7th, 8th grade in Waldorf schools is that students begin to individuate, they begin to push back, particularly if they've had a teacher for 6 or 7 years. The teacher becomes a parent-like person, then they push back against the teacher as well as their parents. And part of that is this notion of they want to get out in the real world, which means not the Waldorf high school. So, and of course, once they get out in the real world, they begin to realize what a good thing they had going in the Waldorf school, but that's a different story. So there, I don't know how, there certainly are people, and there is extraordinary quality of aesthetic work, of mathematic work, of scientific work that I've seen in Waldorf high schools that certainly transcends the normative high school level of you know, academics or aesthetics. But I haven't seen anybody who actually has studied that. So all that I've seen is anecdotal.
Thanks, David. Julian, I want to share.
I think one of the main reasons why I'm attracted to awareness through the body is exactly this vital education. When you think of the Japanese warrior, this culture of dignity and rule, and now we can break all the rules because we don't self-limit, and so we're killing each other literally. But the positive work of awareness through the body is to go through these senses and to refine them and to get out of the visual only and get into our other senses and into our inner life. And it's really this effort and aspiration to be inner directed from what Sri Aurobindo and Mother call the psychic being, and have that as the guide for our lives. That is the point of education and of this incarnation. So I resonate with this need for vital education, and am really enjoying awareness through the body as one way to approach that exploration and to take it to areas of self-control and self-awareness. that I think are so needed right now.
From your experience, I think you taught elementary school or other schools, but what you have seen earlier and what you see today, what do you think we can do? Because we have sensory training, early on in a lot of preschools, Montessori, and elementary schools. But how do you think we can strengthen that, moving forward to the higher education?
Yeah, I'm of course out of touch. I worked in a preschool that was combined Montessori and child-centered education, and also allowed the children to go and play outdoors and really let that have a release valve for them. Anytime during the day, it wasn't like there was a certain period where they could go outside. They could have the lesson and go outside throughout the morning. So there was really this breathing, literally in and out, that I think allowed more concentration and good interaction when inside. And I think the thing that concerns me currently is the presence of the phone and texting, and that aspect of the culture that's allowed us to be cruel, to have those adolescent barrier breaking, the kinds of things that David was talking about, the pre-adolescents, these kids who are trying to find themselves, who can be so cruel via a text, and the bullying, cyberbullying. It's kind of something that I feel is tough in the culture right now, and we really haven't caught up to it, or found ways and norms to have these young people be safe. And the kids who commit suicide because of it, because of self-image or shaming or teasing and bullying, is tragic and is really happening significantly. And I don't think we have a handle on it at all.
Vida, you want?
Yeah. As Martha said, I think it's very important for the children to be in nature and get in touch with the beauty of nature and the music that we hear, the sounds that we hear in nature, and also the beauty in the music. And also to help them to read biographies of great souls where they can connect and learn from them. And also trying to bring out the goodwill in them, and then the teachers can be the biggest role models. And then one thing Vital Education talks about is guiding them to make the maximum effort, even for a thing that is of no importance. And so they can strengthen them just like they strengthen the muscles. And the other thing is to write about themselves, becoming more conscious of why they do things, or what they want to do, or what their emotions and feelings are. And the other thing that we can do is to inculcate the will to progress, inside them, give them that just strong willpower for them to progress and transform their nature. And yeah. And so thank you. That's what I have.
Marco, you want to share?
Well, yes, I think everyone has already said what I would have said also. So I don't know how much I can add to this, and I if not emphasizing one aspect or the other, I like very much also this idea of vital education that exercises the child, and not only the child, but perhaps also ourselves, the adults, for beauty, harmony. And for an artistic sensation and for the contact of nature, which has also its beauty, harmony, art, if you will, so to speak. And that's easier than said, because I think we live in a culture where we believe in the superiority of abstraction. I can see this, for example, as a physics teacher. When I was a physics teacher, there's still this idea that physics is about formulas, mathematics, abstractions, difficult concepts, where the observation of the phenomenon, for example, in nature is, well, yes, there is all this also, but it is also always somehow secondary. There is still a resistance to look at physical phenomena from a purely observational and phenomenological point of view. Steiner would have spoken of phenomenology. And this is really extremely, there's an extreme lack of this, which reflects itself also in future professional way of doing one's own job, for example, as a scientist. We nowadays have this idea, and it is, in fact, the scientist is always mostly, especially physicists, concerned with mathematics, with abstraction, with calculations, and there we have lost the contact with the nature of the phenomenon. And that's, I think, Mother didn't say this explicitly perhaps in this way, but it makes part of I think the sense organ, the exercising of sense organs, also in this domain, which we usually think is very abstract. The other thing that I think is highly, and also Julian underlined it, this lack of regulating our emotions, of self-control, and to develop a will. Well, what did we say? That will, that no failure can weaken. I like this sentence. A will that no failure can weaken, because only through failures we learn. And I saw a lot of children in school who did not have every failure was something, a tragedy. And it is an emotional problem. And that's something I think schools, and also probably also in families and educational environments, familiar educational environments, we have to work on, because it cannot be there is something wrong probably then when a child at every failure breaks down emotionally. Because only through errors and failures we learn and progress. There can be no progress without failures. And it's not that easy to transmit this thing. You cannot transmit this intellectually to children. You have to transmit this somehow on an emotional level as well. And that's a great challenge. And that's something which needs more attention, I think.
Chaitanya?
I think two things that I can add here is one thing is vital education that I have learned from the Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education is it happened very subtly and most beautifully. We were always, we had the scope to learn so many things, the variety of things from the point of view of art or physical education or anything. Everything was very accessible, and we were very fortunate to have all the facilities. But doing those activities, we never understood, at that point at least, I was not so conscious and aware of what I learned. But looking back at the years, I can see what it has helped me, you know, to refine my taste, or to see harmony in things. And as Martha and also Marco had mentioned about, there is, I think very often with children and also in general with everybody, we always look at failure as something that is very negative. But and I think in the ashram school, you have so much of competition. Emphasis is given on competition in term, as in like with sports. Twice a year we have competitions actually, but it's all in the school. It's not with other schools or colleges. And that develops a sense of not about competing, that I come first, you come first, but there's something beyond that. It's the nobility of character. There's so much of team spirit, sportsman spirit. These are the other things that you learn through it. And you really learn to also lose gracefully. That is very often not taught, and children lose out on it. And I feel that was one of the things that I learned. That has been a great learning for me through sports and all. Now, when I look at my son who is 4, and I'm having a very tough time right now because I see him, he's all the time at home and with the pandemic, and doesn't get a chance to express himself, interact. And it's that very impressionable age right now. So just one example is this thing about failure. I see it with him, that small thing, if he's building something and if he sees we are doing it together, then I do something better than him, he can never accept it at this stage. So he will break it and he will ensure that his is better. So I've been trying to work on him on this very simple thing. And I can see how hard it is for a child to accept that. So how much ever I have learned, you know, I see how hard it is for me to just work on one child with this one thing. So it is all, I think it's a lot with examples, with stories, and it's very important for them to interact with more people. And it's only through failure that you learn how to accept it. Right now, he's all alone at home, and he realizes that the whole attention is on him. It's all about him. It's all, you know, full attention is on him. It's only through competition with people, in a healthy competition, I mean, you know, to learn, you develop some qualities. Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing is about will to progress, I think is so important to develop in a child. Through all these things that we do, either exposing them to nature or doing art, it's ultimately, it is not what you're doing about the painting or about anything, math or any subject. It's about what you learn beyond it. So somehow if we can cultivate in the child the meaningfulness of what you're doing instead of just the line or the stroke, if they're able to slowly recognize that, that's when I think they enjoy things more. And the things like winning or losing or how great their work is doesn't matter. And they slowly develop this will to learn, to enjoy, and to do things better. And that's all part of vital education and all part of education as I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaitanya. I know as New Creation International, as an organization, like Julian mentioned, we are trying to share the practice and principles of awareness to the body, which as adults, when we can experience, so we can share with our children, whether at home or in schools. One quick question for Andrea. I know in public schools and independent schools, we have sensory training, character education, and right now I think there's restorative justice in different forms, but we can think of at least providing a support for the teachers by integrating all of these. I mean, they're working hard and it's not easy, but how can we support? And Andrea, what did you see from your own so many years of experience?
I think the support that meant the most to me was having a small group of colleagues engaged in mutual work. That shared work really makes a difference if you have a goal that means something to the 4 or 5 people on the team or in the office. Knowing that other people are trying to wrestle with the same problems that you are helps you free your mind so you can think differently about things, helps you maintain the forward motion that you know you need, and also balances you out a little bit because it keeps you from becoming grotesque. One of the things I really liked about this idea of talking about the vital force is that we have a lot of cultural capital. We could read about what happens when people do not control their vital force. They become grotesque, they become exaggerated, they become unsocial. You can see, we were talking about Julian, and I think Marco, you made a good comment too. So it's an old idea, but it really reinforces the importance of having arms around you, either literally or figuratively, so that you don't go wandering off into some place that is not healthy for you. So for me, that's the way that teachers got the best support when I was teaching. But I think it's also true socially. That's one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to be isolated right now. So hard for your son. It's so hard for everybody not to have at least some physical feedback in how we are managing ourselves. So I don't know if that's quite the answer you were looking for, but that's what I can give you.
I know one of the things that Sri Aurobindo mentions is because emotions travel through our nervous system, and the nerve purification, that is through breathing and other techniques. Julian, would you like to comment anything about awareness of the body?
Well, it literally goes through the five senses and the five elements, and I think what struck me was how much of it was done blindfolded. That was very much part of the experience, and I feel that we're so lopsided as a visual culture, and so many of us are stuck in our screens and our phones, and especially now. And this need to go within and become aware of subtle energies and to step back and observe, this idea of cultivating witness consciousness is fundamental. The self-awareness to all faith traditions, know thyself. So it's really awareness through the body, looking at everything from Simon Says to dance to new games to all kinds of efforts, and then inventing lots of things to practice both individually and with couples and in smaller groups and then in larger groups, a kind of different group dynamics and team building. And we were given one impossible task, it seemed to me, years ago. And I had been in another situation previously where the task was literally impossible. And it was kind of a test to see how the group would react to failure. And do you blame other people? But the task we were given was not impossible. And I just hadn't gotten the big enough picture to see how it could succeed. And I really appreciated being pushed that through the process of doing these, what start off as very simple exercises like feeling the energy between your hands, could end up being a whole group dynamic that meant working with a group of people in a way where you really had to become one as a collective. And I just found that so remarkable. It was literally synergy, the Buckminster Fuller's term, where the single elements create something more by their interaction. and it's a transcendent experience, and I don't have enough of that anymore these days. So I really have enjoyed the exploration of awareness through the body. And I think Juan and Aloka, they are, the founders are both yogis and did their own exploration. Juan is a physical therapist and Aloka did dance. And so they had both an inner and specific capacity, which they amplified and brought to this. And the children in Oroville adored them. So it was also to be in touch with extraordinary teachers, and that I think we've all benefited from over the years. Certainly, I enjoyed my contact with them.
Thank you, Julian. Anyone has any other comments?
Well, one of the qualities of awareness through the body in the context of the United States, which I think is also important, is that it should not be provocative to a great majority of folks, and just work with the activities themselves. It's not, you know, I mean, I can imagine for certain fundamentalist groups, it would be, you know, they'd react against it. But for the vast majority of, so for example, public schools in the United States, if people knew about it, particularly, you know, at every level, but particularly in elementary schools where teachers have more time, you know, I think there would be a lot of interest in it, because it's something that would help to center and engage and calm down kids and allow them to be more focused on the intellectual stuff. And it doesn't have dogma necessarily. Obviously, there's a certain dogma that one can locate it in, which would be perceived as dogma by people who don't understand it or don't want to perceive it. So I think there's an enormous potential in the United States to extend access to it to a lot of folks, you know, who might not be open to it if they actually knew. You know, I'm not suggesting deceit. I'm suggesting that the capacity for introduction without going into all the details, initially anyway. And, you know, I think that's something that Margot did really well, that she engaged people in ATB without telling them a whole lot about it. And the engagement was really powerful.
It's so nice that it's experiential. And working with Aloka, she says almost nothing. and it really is, you're going on a journey, and let's see what happens. And I totally agree. It's we have something free of dogma. And since you mentioned her name, Margot's birthday today, so happy birthday to Margot.
Yeah, David, I really agree with you, especially considering that how much recess time and PE time has been eliminated, even from very young, for young kids. They need to have some way to bleed off that energy. And this looks like something you could do, as you were, I can't remember who was saying, you could go in and out, and you could do a little bit, and then you can do some other stuff. So I think you're on the right track for that.
Good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Engaging.
Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, till next time.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the
Bye-bye.
week, wherever you are.